Hey there, everybody. How's it going on today? We have the very first episode of the podcast, Critical Ring Theory. And also for all of you on YouTube, you're going to be listening to it here. It is me, Kevin, along with my buddy, Pavan.
What's up?
Man, a few words. Simpler than Big Khali's ring inset move.
I give you one joke and you screw it up in the first 36 seconds.
He gave me that joke right before we started recording, and I
It was
botched it
supposed to
already.
be simpler than Great Khali's moveset. But I forgot that Kevin has the vocabulary of Festus.
I guess I'm the simple one in this scenario. Okay, well, yeah. So basically, we're doing this kind of podcast thing because we're just a bunch of fools that really we just banter about wrestling in text message all the time. Usually, it's me, Pavan, and our buddy Mike, who you'll hear occasionally on the podcast and on YouTube. About how much we kind of hate the product right now and how they're botching it over and over again on the WWE, while other shows are doing well.
That unique perspective of wrestling fans who hate wrestling.
Yeah. We're gonna be the first. We're gonna be the first media forum that has that perspective. So buckle up, folks. So basically, we've been looking to do that. So this is gonna be the first episode where you get a little bit of a taste of it. And we thought, why not? Let's start off with one of the most forgettable pay-per-views that is probably going to happen this entire year. It's going to be Stomping Grounds, brought to you by WWE tomorrow night, Sunday, the 23rd of June. And we're going to do a couple predictions for that. And Pavan's even got something in store with you that kind of goes along with our predictions, other than a simple, yeah, they're going to win or yeah, they're going to lose. So I'm pretty hyped.
Indeed. So one of the things that I love to do as I kind of think about this, what's the word I'm looking for? Really just depressing a wrestling time period is try to do it better. So I know there's been a lot of talk recently about Vince and the writers and who's got control of what and how the whims of wrestling all change by what Vince does. And to me, that's a more complicated thing. But I love to just come up with storylines. And I know that the writer, or to work for WWE, you have to have been a writer on a soap opera for 5 years, which I get, but I also think is kind of problematic. So as we're going through, we're going to make our predictions, and then Kevin's going to say, Pavan, book it better, and I'm going to give you a quick 30 to 60 seconds of how I would do this better, or just figure out a way to make it more entertaining. That being
kind of like an elevator pitch, sort of, right?
Yeah. That being said, this show in particular is going to be really hard to do it on. We already talked about the fact that, we're a little bit downtrodden. I'll go ahead and own that I have not watched a regular WWE show since before WrestleMania. And other than watching the network for pay-per-views or specials, I do not really watch the product a whole lot anymore. I'm still a wrestling fan. I tend to live off of indie stuff now. So I am that AEW mark, so to speak. Watch a lot of New Japan, Ring of Honor. But since all of the Elite left, it's been much harder for me to watch that one. And then I do enjoy a good PWG show, even though it takes a while for those to come out. So the sad thing is during the wars, so to speak, WWE was my company, and I've been very loyal to them. But they kind of broke the formula that kept me, which is great wrestling and good storytelling. And now it's they just have really good athletic guys, but so does everybody else. And some of these other folks are telling better stories or just being more entertaining.
No, you can come out and say it. It's because they don't do thong matches anymore. That's why.
Well, Rikishi left, so you can't really do it anymore.
Yeah, once Kishi left, all interest was out the window. Well, actually, okay, so just to kind of jump in here and kind of help explain further why you should definitely listen to us as opposed to maybe some other places. First of all, I'm going to say I'm more the WWE guy, probably out of us two. I try to watch some of the indie stuff, but now, mind you, it's hard for me to watch the WWE product as well. I usually dabble a little bit into what's brought onto the air Mondays and Tuesdays, but it's difficult. But anyway, the reason why we're a little bit different, we call it Critical Ring Theory because we're trying to approach wrestling in many ways, from kind of a more educational standpoint. We're going to probably tackle some things the average wrestling fan doesn't. We're not extreme social justice warriors or anything like that, but we're going to use our brains in thinking about kind of the complexity of some of the decisions that the company is going to be making, some of the decisions other companies are making, such as AEW's really big emphasis on accessibility to watching their product and enjoying it. That's a kind of a big deal that we're definitely going to tackle, stuff like that. So that's what makes it a little bit more interesting, and that's why it's going to be kind of unique coming from us.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and share that this is one of the areas that I'm kind of been big on pushing, and I think it's one of the things that's very unique about wrestling. And I think Bruce Pritchard talks about this sometimes on his podcast. But wrestling is in this weird place where it's like a scripted storyline, just like everything else on television. But because these characters are still kind of living in day-to-day society, there's certain buttons you can't push. So like and this is a little bit of an extreme, but like, Dolph Ziggler can't cut off somebody's head like they can in Game of Thrones because he's got to go, walk into a 7-Eleven after the show, and people are like, oh, that's still Dolph Ziggler. And so it's exploring that. And so one example of something we'll talk about, I think eventually for me, is when they were doing the run up to WrestleMania and the whole Kofi Kingston storyline, where it was like people like you don't win championships. And they've kind of played with that in the past with the Booker T angle from many years ago. And so talking about this idea of including race and storylines, and there's a lot of people who were very against that when that came out. And so I just kind of throw that out there to give you an idea of some of the things we want to talk about, because I think that there is some complexity. And I think the other thing is, for me, and I've thought this most of my life, is oftentimes when you talk about pro wrestling and pro wrestling fans, people just make assumptions that, we're all slack-jawed gawkers. And the reality is, like, both Kevin and I have master's degrees and we work in higher education. And so there is something more to it. And like, as John Oliver has gotten into this conversation with his show, and, more and more people are starting to talk about wrestling in this kind of nuanced entertainment storyline development way that kind of understand the art form. I think that there's more room for that conversation to go to different places, like Kevin was saying. And so we're excited to do that and see if we can create something that's compelling and that nobody else is doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we get into some of this and we'll do videos, kind of surrounding it, you're going to take a second and you'll probably think a little bit more about like, hey, why do I really love to hate someone like Jinder Mahal, who got the title? And it was just kind of easy to hate them because he was presented as this foreign heel.
Yeah, because it was the title that made us hate him.
I was actually a really big supporter of Jinder Mahal getting the title.
I just think that's because you thought he looked like me, but whatever.
What mirror do you use? Anyway, let's move on because we've been talking about ourselves too much. We're a little too chatty about that, but we want to explain kind of why we're a little different in this realm. But now we're going to go to why we're kind of the same, at least for this one. We want to go into the pay-per-view Stomping Grounds that is happening here. We want to go over kind of the matchups that are going on. The card, at first glance, Pavan, I think it looks really rough. What do you think?
Well, first of all, Stomping Ground, the name is pretty god-awful.
Oh, it's horrible.
I mean, I would have actually preferred Great Balls of Fire, and that's saying something.
Yeah, Little Richard at least comes to mind when you think of that one.
Yeah, but so the card is rough. Some of it has to do with the Saudi deal and the fact that they had to produce this other show that was going to be equal to or better than WrestleMania.
Which was stupid.
Yes. The glorified house show where I think one title maybe changed hands.
And the desecration of The Undertaker. Yeah. Not so much Goldberg, but Undertaker.
Desecration is the word for that.
Oh, my God.
May that match rest in peace. But, yeah, so it's hard because, like, the show has some matches that are going to be entertaining and athletic, but anything that you cared about after WrestleMania has basically died. So Becky Lynch has lost all steam.
No one cares.
Seth Rollins and, like, the Brock thing is, I have a very hard time investing in it. I thought that they were going to wait for him to cash in until SmackDown went to Fox in the fall, but I think that they're going to hit the panic button, so that may happen sooner. But there's just a lot of things being thrown against the wall, and they're in this period right before they start building to SummerSlam, so a lot of filler, a lot of matches that we've seen already. So
Yeah, because there's only 2 pay-per-views till then. I mean, well, Stomping Grounds, and then Extreme Rules, and then SummerSlam.
indeed, but they have so many matches that have just had to be immediately done over because of the fact that they had this show in Saudi Arabia and Money in the Bank really didn't change a whole lot, and they cashed in one of the Money in the Banks immediately. So they don't have a whole lot of options, and their ratings are starting to tank, and so they got to produce something quality, but they haven't done enough to make people care. Like the ticket sales for this show have been awful. Um, I genuinely think that this might be a low point for them in like a 5-year span, that it could be that bad of a show
It
slash
has to be.
response.
It's so bad. It has to be. It's just like when I look at this card, it's so depressing. Like I can't even figure out what necessarily should be in the main card, what should be pre-show. It's there's there's only I genuinely think there's maybe 2 matches I'm looking forward to.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I mean, I think that they might be able to pull out some surprises to make it a little better. Like word is that AJ Styles is on his way back from injury. But yeah, like, but the other thing about this is sometimes it's the shows where you're like, okay, this is going to be awful, where they kind of pull something out and make it work. So I'm hopeful, but the last couple of months aren't giving me a whole lot to be optimistic about.
Not at all. I mean, okay, so I guess to kind of move into the predictions to kind of illustrate the point we're talking about here. All right, so how about we start off with this? Let's start off with the first one kind of on the list here, which could be pre-show. Don't really know. Usually that stuff kind of gets figured out the day of. How about the Raw Tag Team Championship match? It's the Revival versus the Usos.
Oh, I didn't even know that was happening. There
Yeah,
you go.
there you go. See, this is illustrating the point. This is what we're talking about. Because like for me personally, as much as I'm looking, like I really like the Usos. I remember a solid 2 years ago, I was like, dude, they are so boring. Can we comment with the Usos, please? But when they reinvented themselves, kind of like this little like prison gimmick or whatever, now they're awesome. Now I still think now they're up there as the best tag team in the world. And going against the Revival, who have been really lame as champions.
But who others would also argue may be the best tag team in the world. They just haven't been presented too well with their.
I think you could argue it, but I wouldn't make that argument. But that you could argue they're up there, I guess. Yeah. But like now that they're in this like stable with Shane McMahon or whatever it is, I guess they're buddies along with Drew McIntyre or whatever. It's been really just weird. It looks like they gave them the title belts just to make them happy, so they're not jumping ship immediately to AEW or So okay, so with all that said, what do you think Pavan is probably realistically the winner of this match?
Um, it's tough. I'm gonna say the Usos, mainly because the Revival just turned down contract deals to come back, and there's also this rumor that they may unify these. But I think that they gave the Revival the titles to placate them. It didn't work out, and they still want to leave. So I think that they're going to get the belts on the Usos, who are established, who also just signed new contracts, and who they've invested with. And honestly, like, the thing that's going to be the saddest about this is if you give them a good 15 minutes, this could be like a show stealer. But I have no doubt that they're going to turn this into some cheesy comedy spot where something stupid happens and the Revival look like idiots because they just want to, you know, I don't want to say desecrate, but they want to basically make them look like idiots because
Oh
that's
yeah,
what they're doing right now. It's one of those things where just by the virtue of how much talent they have signed, they take these people and they put them in storylines. And I guess that there's this thought process of like, oh, well, we can always revive them when we need them. But
no
like
pun intended.
nobody has done that well in the last year. Like, I mean, Finn Balor's the IC title holder. He's not on this show. And so,
And I do not care about Finn Balor.
well, only when he's not the demon.
Oh yeah, because it's clearly the best that he's at his best when he's the demon. But that's whatever. Beside the point.
Yes, and we're getting off track. So bottom line is the Uso Penitentiary will have their titles back.
I agree with that as well. I think the Usos are going to win this one as well. Like you said, the Revival has just kind of looked dumb. At this point, it doesn't really matter if they're champions. They just need to kind of be like the dumb lackeys of Biff from Back to the Future, basically right now. And Shane McMahon is Biff. As long as they're around, I mean, they don't need the titles, and the Usos probably could use them more and use them more effectively because it doesn't look like they're super interested in making the Revival do anything of consequence. So I would probably say the Usos as well. All right, so we connect on that one. Let's do the kind of the standard here about the Cruiserweight Championship. You have Tony Nese versus Drew Gulak versus Akira Tozawa.
Well done on the pronunciations there.
Thank you very much.
So,
I have a master's degree.
Careful, I know what it's in.
I only had to wear a tie to get it.
Touche. But so I don't know how much you know about the lead into this. I did actually open up Wikipedia for 5 minutes before this to make sure I had a general idea.
We do our homework.
Those.
Let it never be said. We don't work hard.
Those scholarly sources like Wikipedia. But so the way that this worked is they had a 4-way match to determine who was going to fight Tony Nese. It ended in a double pin with Drew Gulak and Akira Tozawa pinning each other simultaneously. And that is how I think that this match should actually end, is some variation of all three of them being able to win simultaneously so that the belt is thrown into chaos. So I am predicting a 3-way tie.
Wow. Okay.
A bold decision, I know.
That is a hell of a bold decision. Usually you get one winner, but you're shooting for 3.
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
50-50 booking, so they're actually trying to make it 30-30-30.
33. You know what? I'm not going to be so much as bold as you. I'm just going to go flat out. I'm picking Tony Nese to retain the Cruiserweight Championship because I don't think they know what they're doing. I think Gulak would be great, but I just don't think they're going to do it.
They should.
But then again, I didn't think Tony Nese was going to get the title either, though. So.
I knew he would because they want. This is again the genius that's going on there. Buddy Murphy was killing it. They're like, we need to get him on a regular show. Then they draft him, and we haven't seen him since.
Which it's just beyond stupid.
Indeed,
beyond stupid. He was I say was because he hasn't been around. Arguably the hottest talent in the company, as in performance.
Yeah, in the ring.
Like I'm not saying
nobody was like dying to see Buddy Murphy cut a promo or anything, but from an in-ring standpoint, he was telling some of the best stories, and he's amazing in the ring, and for me, that's a big part of it. And like he can do the acrobatics and all of that stuff, but he can also tell a story, and like it's kind of at least from the in-ring, you need both of those things to be stellar.
Absolutely. So then curiosity here, since this seems like one that's tickling your little interest spot here, is let's say go back to the Tony Nese versus Buddy Murphy. Mm-hmm. How would you have kind of booked that a little differently in that how would Buddy Murphy have come up other than being drafted and sitting? What is an ideal kind of scenario for you if we rewind to before he lost the title?
So let me just make sure I'm understanding you. So the outcome is still to get him onto SmackDown, but to do it differently.
The outcome is to call him up, I think, to present him in a way that is befitting his performance at the time and what you think could have been a good projection and a successful first appearance for him on the main roster.
So what I would have done is, and you have to have some time to do this. So you get to WrestleMania, you have him beat Tony Nese, and then the next, 2 days later on 205 Live, he comes out and says, I've beaten the best that this division has to offer. There's nobody else in the locker room I can beat. Like, you could bring out Drake Maverick, but like, I don't wrestle people who are under 5 feet tall, and just kind of run down the entire locker room and then have it basically be a quest where he's like, I have, done everything I can do with this show. And so what I'm going to do is every week moving on, I'm going to show up on one of the 2 big shows, and I'm going to take on a champion. And so I would have had him going up against several of the mid-card champions and either win or put on really strong performances, kind of a la Cedric Entertainer. Not Cedric.
Cedric the
Yeah, that
Entertainer,
was
eh?
awesome.
I was a Bernie Mac fan.
Who didn't like him? Cedric Alexander is what I'm trying to say here. In the
Yeah.
cruiserweight tournament where he lost, but everybody was like, "You need to call him up," and
Mhm.
basically essentially get to this point where it's like, okay, and then maybe have him win like the U.S. title and have both for a hot second, and then do something in 205 Live where essentially it's like either you just need to lay down this title or kind of like your typical Money in the Bank thing where they filmed 205 Live right after SmackDown. So, acknowledge that for once and say, okay, Buddy Murphy just won the U.S. title from Samoa Joe, who then massacred him. And so then all of a sudden, whoever you want it to be ends up beating him, and that's your way out. And now he's on a show and matters kind of immediately because he's already got a title.
No, I think that's pretty good for coming up with that off the top of your head. I think that was a pretty good prediction there, Pavan.
Indeed. And some other people are paid like 5 figures or 6 figures to do that.
And they don't do it nearly as sweetly as you do.
Well, I should be clear. I do respect them, and I realize that they have a lot of things that they have to deal with, like travel and all the elements that go into building a show. But it's fun, and I think I'm actually pretty good at it.
No big deal. Okay, perfect. So let's dive into a next prediction. For that one, though, just to recap, Pavan has all three winning the cruiserweight match, and I'm just going to go with Tony Nese on this one. All right. So the next one is we have the New Day versus Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. This is kind of interesting because Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens KO's come back and it's kind of fallen flat, truthfully.
Mm-hmm.
But Sami Zayn's made a lot out of his return. He's been on kind of both shows a lot. He's been a really big character, which I think is interesting because I always thought Kevin Owens was kind of I always saw him as kind of the main eventer of the two. But Sami Zayn's really getting himself out there. And of course, you have New Day, their classic. Big E and Woods going against these two. It should be a good match, but I'll go ahead and say kind of first what I'm thinking. I would like to think that the New Day was going to win because they're rolling with the main champion. But I don't think you can kill Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn at this point. Zayn's been out there. If he takes a loss, he can afford it because he's a heel. So you could just go, whatever, it wasn't fair. I pulled a muscle or something stupid like that. He could do that. So can KO. But I think it'll help their steam a lot if they were to win, as opposed to Big E and Woods losing kind of separately without Kofi. So it probably won't impact them as much, but they also have a much better legacy within the WWE. So that's kind of what I'm thinking there. What do you think, Pavan?
Well, I have Owens and Zayn taking it primarily just because the New Day can take a loss to me much more than Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn can. I know that you said that
Yeah.
they're the heels and Zayn can just make something up, but Zayn has literally lost, I think, several of his last few matches, and so I think that they're in danger of butchering something that's actually fairly decent. I don't think that anybody ever was like Sami Zayn is a great on the mic, but the last couple of weeks, from what I've seen, he's done a pretty good job, and so I think it's their way of
He has.
getting back some steam. And the New Day really doesn't lose anything. They're still going to be rolling with the world champion, and they're still multiple time tag team champions. And so, of all the I know I made that comment earlier about people that they think they can revive. That's one of the groups that they actually can do that with, I think.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's no credibility that would be lost with the New Day if they were to lose this one. And Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn have a lot they need to gain, truthfully, like you said. So we matched
with that said, so this is going to roll into the how I would do this. This is one I thought about. So what I would do is I would put this match very early in the card, and I would show Owens and Zayn talking to Dolph Ziggler. And so then you go to the match, and Owens and Zayn win. The New Day are all kind of sad they lost, but then they're doing their pancake thing afterwards or whatever. And then Owens and Zayn just beat them down again. Just kick the ever-living crap out of the New Day. And then you go back to the backstage area, and you see Dolph Ziggler paying off Owens and Zayn and kind of gut into that this is just between me and Kofi. And so Dolph is going to do whatever it takes to make sure that happens.
Ooh, okay. I could dig that. I mean, I like the idea of connecting with Dolph Ziggler, which is pretty natural, I think, considering, obviously Ziggles is going against Kofi Kingston later on that night for the title. But you know how it is. Dolph Ziggler was one of my old favorites. So it's nice to see him kind of tossed in there. And I think that would be a good way to kind of connect them.
Indeed.
All
It's nice to
right.
see Dolph without
Yeah.
some dirt on him.
Yeah. What do you mean by that? I'm losing you here.
Just that he's been buried for the last 7 years consecutively.
I didn't catch that one. Yeah, yeah. Dolph unfortunately has gone through some tough time ever since he cashed in the Money in the Bank all those years ago on Alberto Del Rio. Although I did really like when he was a Drew McIntyre, very reminiscent of Shawn and Diesel, except I guess Diesel
Well,
won.
and, reminiscent in that Dolph is just ripping off Shawn Michaels for the last, 4 years.
It's okay. I'm fine. It looked good to me. Shawn lost his hair. We need a new guy with big fluffy hair. Okay, so yeah, looks like we're both connected on those. That's good. And then, actually, speaking of Shawn Michaels, we have kind of a connection here. Daniel Bryan and Rowan, Shawn Michaels' old protege, trained, versus Heavy Machinery for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. Man, I cannot be more bored with this matchup.
Well, so this is the thing. Like, Heavy Machinery got called up, and I actually find them entertaining. But there's just no way they're going to put the titles on Heavy Machinery. I
No.
There's a part of me that thinks that they're doing this because it's going to make the SmackDown tag division a little more interesting, and B, they don't want Daniel Bryan fighting as many matches that in solo to try to protect him. But there's
Yeah.
pretty much no way that Daniel Bryan and Rowan lose this match to me.
No, there's no way. I mean, yes, you're right. The SmackDown tag team picture looks bad. It's bad. And Heavy Machinery is one of the only ones that could actually go up and challenge for the titles. But there's just no way. These two are called up with really no steam. They're basically, to me, they're a comedy tag team at this point on SmackDown. I mean, they're not going to take it from Daniel Bryan and Rowan. Bryan, he's lost some steam ever since he lost the title, of course. But only so much. He'll come back. I'm sure he's Daniel Bryan. But there's just no way they can lose. So I don't even want to talk about this one too much more because they're not going to lose the Heavy Machinery. Heavy Machinery will be forgotten about just like the Revival.
Indeed.
Okay, what I do want to move on to the match I'm most excited about for the night, and this is got to be the best match of the night. Either this one or the Ziggles and Kingston, which is Samoa Joe versus Ricochet for the U.S. Championship. I'm so excited about this because you have Samoa Joe is currently holding the title versus Ricochet, who won his way into the match. And Ricochet is a guy that I think if they really, really wanted to, the fans would be obsessed with. You could put the title on him and it would work. And they're not going to do that. And when I'm talking about the title, I mean the main title, the big title, Universal or WWE. This one, I think Ricochet will win this title, actually, because they don't seem to like to keep titles on Samoa Joe that long. So I could see Ricochet getting this kind of a good boons for the kind of work that he's been doing up to this point. I think they recognize that he's over with the crowd. They like his acrobatics because he can do more than pretty much anyone else out there. Although I could see them being a little nervous because I think he had some kind of sex tape or sex photo leak recently. So they get a little weird with those sometimes, although it didn't seem to stop Seth Rollins from doing well. But I think ultimately he's probably going to get it. Joe's still going to be in the mix. He's still going to be a menacing heel. So I don't think it'd be that bad if he were to lose. What do you think about this one?
I agree, and I think it's purely because, I agree because I don't think Joe was supposed to be holding the title right now, period. I think that they wanted it to be on Mysterio. Mysterio ends up getting hurt. And so they were like, okay, well, we'll just put it back on Joe. And so I don't think that there's any long-term investment here. I think that they realized that when Ricochet first came up, he was getting big reactions and they're starting to dwindle a little bit. And so I think that this is their way of kind of trying to reestablish him as, hey, you should care about this guy. He's going to put on a show every night. And so I see Ricochet taking it. I think that they could do some really fun sequences, which I mean, all Ricochet matches tend to include, but I would love to
Oh
see
yeah.
some sort of sequence that ends up with Ricochet coming off the top rope, getting caught in the coquina clutch, and then somehow reversing into a pinfall for how he wins. I think that they could pull that off really effectively and in a way that would tell a good story, but then also just be really impressive.
Oh, absolutely. I think that it could be. I think it's likely to be the match of the night. What do you think about that? Do you think that is also, or maybe some other
I
one?
think it will be in that, like some of the other ones that have the potential to be, like, I go back to, like you were saying, Kofi and Ziggles. That match is gonna be great, but we've seen it like a billion times, and at least with these two, they haven't really touched a whole lot. So I think that people won't necessarily have that preconceived notion of why am I having to watch this again.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, how about this? That was a match of the night candidate. How about we move on to one that is very unlikely to be a match of the night candidate,
Every
which
other
is going to be
card,
everyone's.
yes.
No, I like a few matches left on this one. I'm going to leave the most disappointing one last because it's probably the biggest title. But how about Roman Reigns versus Drew McIntyre? I'm just not looking forward to this at all.
Yeah, it's not going to be good. I mean, I think Roman has to win because he had his first major loss after coming back from leukemia to Shane McMahon, who out wrestled Roman Reigns for 20 minutes. Like, even though Drew
Yeah,
McIntyre was the reason why Shane won at the end, before that and really after that, Shane controlled the whole match, which is just sad.
which is so
Well,
depressing. It's
I
so
kind of think
depressing.
it's like this is like the way my mind works is like, okay, so you cut to Shane when he's 5 years old, and like Vince is making his wrestlers play with him, and so like just now it's just 40 years in advance, and it's still like, no, go lay down for Shane. That's my boy. Yeah,
You're
exactly.
fired.
Um, so I think Roman has to win. Yeah, like Drew needs it more, but the only way I see it not playing out that way is if it leads into Shane getting involved. But I actually believe that they're planning on putting the world title on Shane, so I think that they're not going to do that.
Oh, I can fully believe that. I mean, first of all, I just want to go out and say I agree with you. Roman is gonna win this one. Drew does need it way more because I think ever since Drew separated from Ziggler, it's just been down, 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 and that's really disappointing because it looks like they had massive plans, and they still possibly do have big plans, but they keep putting Drew against a guy that you know is likely to win. And it's like, okay, well, I would love to know the strategy here because you would hope there'd be some squashing involved for Drew. But then again, you have Braun Strowman who had so much steam and you never did anything with him. You put him up against Brock Lesnar, the guy who also doesn't lose, and you effectively kind of killed that push. So yeah, ultimately, I think that's the case. And man, if Shane McMahon does end up with the title, it'll feel it won't be shades of David Arquette, but it'll feel like it to me. Not David Arquette. Well, how about we'll say Russo back in WCW? It just feels like it shouldn't happen. There's no reason for it. Like Shane's purpose, in my opinion, is it's effectively kind of done. Although his heel work right now is really good. With a roster of overcrowded people, it'd be really nice if he just went away soon. So putting the title on him would really hurt me.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where when he was doing like 2, 3 shows a year and like he was doing his typical I'm going to jump off something high, like I think that that's the
Yeah.
way to use him, particularly now when their roster is like so thick that not like half of the people who should be on a pay-per-view aren't on a regular basis, especially with this wild card rule, which is
Beyond
yeah.
stupid. Yeah.
So
I mean, you're right about that. That's optimal way to use Shane
hmm,
McMahon. Put him on a couple shows a year, have them jump off something really tall, and you're
yeah,
good. Go home. So, okay. So, anyway, I diverted a little bit there, but we both agree Roman Reigns on that one over Drew
yes.
McIntyre. Okay. So, how about we go to some of the women's matches here? There are two championship women's matches. We have how about this? We go to the Raw Women's Championship, Becky Lynch versus Lacey Evans. And these two have already kind of faced off a little bit recently, with Lacey Evans losing. Now, do you think Lacey Evans can afford to lose this match against Becky Lynch?
No, but I think she will.
I'm conflicted personally. I was also like, I'm also of the mind. Apparently, I'm really cynical when it comes to Becky Lynch. At Money in the Bank, I thought she was going to lose both titles.
I called she would win. Well, I thought she was going to win both of them and then get cashed in on. So it kind of played out the way I thought it would. It was just she lost the match and then it happened to Charlotte.
Yeah. So you were closer than me. I was totally negative. I was like, yeah, she's going to lose both of them that night. They're going to hit the reset button real hard. So you know what? I'm going to be bold. I'm actually going to take Lacey Evans on this one, assuming that they don't know that this is really dumb to hurt Becky Lynch this way. Because like they really built Lacey Evans up a lot with her previews, with her walking to the ring and stuff. Now, it wouldn't be the first time that they built someone up like that and they never did anything with them. But I think I like Lacey Evans. I think she's got good potential. So giving her the title would really give her some serious clout as the heel she is. And Becky, I don't know if it changes her dynamic if she doesn't have the title. I mean, she could just walk around with a chip on her shoulder, being really pissed off and chasing the title. I think it'd be good. I think it's actually makes more sense.
A couple of things here. First of all, I think it's kind of idiotic that you called this a bold decision that Vince McMahon was going to put the title on the blonde centerfold.
Oh, stop it. It's been on the redhead for a while. While.
So two things beyond that is one, I think that if you push Lacey to the title this soon, you're going to risk alienating a fan base again. Similarly, we talked about Jinder earlier, or even Roman a couple of years ago, where it's like people felt like it was too much too soon. And I think that that's how Lacey feels, and particularly if they do it against Becky, who, even though I said earlier, the fan reaction is dwindled, I think that she's still kind of the sweetheart. So I think it could really backfire. And I know that you're trying to create a heel, but I don't think it's going to create like, oh, I don't like her heat. I think it's going to be like, oh, I don't want to watch her. So what I would actually do with Lacey is kind of at least position her in the comedic role for a little bit until she finds her bearings on the main roster. So the way that I would actually book this one is somehow have the 24/7 title get involved in the middle of this, like Truth is in disguise in the front row, and then Jinder runs up and realizes, and so there's this weird distraction that goes on.
Yeah. Oh my God, Pavan, come on, dude. You think the solution to this is to put Lacey in a comedic role and then add the 24/7?
Well, I think that's where, not necessarily that she becomes the comedic role tonight, but maybe this leads into it, because I just don't think that she has had the start on the roster that they were hoping for. Like, and it didn't really ever make sense, the whole I'm going to walk out and wave. It was like when Ziggler started and was just introducing himself for weeks on weeks. He's like, hi, I'm Dolph Ziggler. And you're just like, I don't know what we're trying to accomplish here. And so I just don't think that Lacey has caught on the way that they wanted her to. I think that Vince probably still likes her, but I just can't see them taking away. Becky's not going to lose that title until SummerSlam.
I will. I'm going to go against you on this one. I know you already know that, but I'm going to take Lacey because I actually think she's probably working out exactly how they wanted. That's my assumption. I think she's actually appeared and shown up how they really would like her to. So I'm willing to kind of stake my claim, everything that's important to me, on the fact that Lacey Evans is going to leave Stomping Grounds as the Raw Women's Champion.
Okay, I don't really want that many pop figures, so I'm not going to take you up on the offer.
I did pre-order the Becky Lynch Funko Pop figure.
Yeah,
I'm pretty excited for that when it comes out.
So I can't give you crap for that.
It's nice. It's her. It says the man wearing the man t-shirt.
I think she's got the shoes that say the man on in it too.
Mm-hmm. She does. The Baller custom made shoes that I forget who it is, but some guy made them for her. I was like, dang, those are cool looking. Okay, so we disagree on that one, but that's okay. How about instead the SmackDown Women's Champion Bayley facing Alexa Bliss.
I have no idea on this one. I
Me
think it's
neither.
going to be Bailey just because they're like, well, I don't really know what to do. But so the way that I would do this, or I think that it's going to lead to a rematch at Extreme Rules because this was the match that kind of killed Bailey 2 years ago with the whole kendo stick. And it's like, oh, I'm not going to do it. I'm too nice. And then everybody just was like, what the hell is this?
That was the best thing ever. We were at that match. Bliss just beat the hell out of Bailey with a kendo stick.
So I think that they're going to try to exercise some demons with that. So I think Bailey wins, but some variation of a kendo stick is shown up in this match that leads to Extreme Rules Kendo Stick 2 Electric Boogaloo. And they have a rematch, and Bailey finally goes off and just knocks Bliss's head out of the park.
That would that would be really interesting. Because like what's so jacked up about this match is Bliss is on Raw, and this is for the SmackDown title, right? So it's because Bliss won a triple threat match. She has the right to challenge for this title, and this is all because of the stupid wild card rule, which initially you thought sounded kind of fun because it's like, all right, they could kind of show up on either brand, but that defeats the purpose of the brands if you're just gonna have them show up. And now,
the other thing is, like, when they first announced it and they were like, wild card rule, I thought it was going to be like at random. So it was like, oh, the Revival show up this week, and then next week it's, I don't know, Bailey or, yeah.
Roman.
But, like, the fact that it's the same four guys or four people traveling from show to show is just like, so really what you wanted to do was have Roman on both shows. So why don't we... yeah.
Oh, absolutely. It's all about Roman. It's always about Roman. I mean, and Zayn, apparently. Zayn's been on both, actually, as well. And I don't know if Bray counts, but that's beside the point. It's a whole different deal, I guess. I guess to put my claim in, why not? I'll just go opposite of you on this one as well. I'm going to go with Bliss just because everything kind of works out for Alexa Bliss, it seems, when it comes to getting titles, and it usually goes very poorly for Bailey. So I'm going to go with Bliss on this one. I think you may be right about the kendo stick for Extreme Rules, which we actually may be at that one too, funny enough, 2 years later. But that one's in Philadelphia. But I'm just going to say that Bailey's going to lose this one here to Bliss with not a lot of reasoning because I've like loosely paid attention to this whole storyline. I know Bliss is like, she's in a coffee now or something. That's a thing. Whatever. But yeah, so we're going to go with her for this one just to stake
just
my
so
claim.
You know, calling that a storyline is kind of, she won a match and now they're having a match and she threw coffee in Bailey's face. That's the whole story.
That's pretty sad because they already made T-shirts for it, but I guess they make T-shirts for anything. They made a T-shirt for when Seth Rollins broke John Cena's nose by accident, so I guess they'll do it for any.
To be fair, I did want one of those shirts. So.
Oh, it was brilliant. You don't see me? It was cool. All right, so we got the two big titles as the last two matches. Sadly, they're not going to be the greatest matches, most likely. Now, the one that's probably going to be really ugly, or could be really ugly, is going to be for the Universal Championship. Seth Rollins, the defending champion,
our Lord
Baron
and
Corbin.
Savior, Baron Corbin.
Constable Corbin.
Speaking of which, why hasn't he been promoted? I'm like sheriff.
He's put in the work.
Exactly.
He's put in his time.
He wears a vest to work every week. That's impressive. Exactly.
He's showing up, not like
Hunter
everyone
puts
else.
on jeans when he's looking the part. TV.
Yeah, and he's been CEO for years, basically.
Vice
whether
President of
name
Talent
or not.
Relations.
Whatever that is. We all know what his real position is. It's above vests. Anyway, yes, we have this championship going on. This is another one of those matches. I'm just so tired of this feud. I don't care. It's been better in the past week or so where they literally in the writing room, they were like, here's what we're going to do. Seth, we got to change this up a little bit. So you're just going to take a chair with you and you're going to hit Corbin anytime you see him. And if there's another person that kind of upsets you, you're going to take the chair and you're going to go hit him randomly as well. So you're just going to go on a hitting spree with chairs to make yourself a little more interesting. While Corbin is going to do his normal thing. He's going to complain. He's going to have like his
And
posse
everybody's
around him
going
and
to
all that
change the
kind of
channel
stuff.
while he's on.
But yeah, and everyone's going to flip and change the channel. They're smart enough to know that people really like chairs clashing against people. And that's the only way you can get me interested in this whole Seth Rollins deal. I mean, they've even found a way to make Elias uninteresting by sort of tethering him to like a Shane McMahon and a Baron Corbin and stuff. It's
just going to say,
awful.
The episode of 2.5 Men from 7 years ago has never been more entertaining than when Baron Corbin is on TV.
Oh, was Baron Corbin on that?
I'm saying I'd much rather watch a show from 7.5 years ago than watch Baron Corbin.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Come on. I didn't know what the hell you were talking about. I was like, when he was on 2.5 Men?
Yeah, he was the fat kid.
Was he the 1.5 Man? He was the fat kid. Yeah, Baron Corbin's the fat kid from 2.5 Men.
That's why he's so angry, is he just saw Charlie Sheen do lines and lines of things.
And he had, what was that? No, not French Stewart. I forget the guy's name is his dad. Anyway, sorry. Prediction, I have to assume Seth Rollins is going to win. Because I can't imagine Baron Corbin winning.
Important here, as important as it can be. There's some special guest referee who has yet to be named. So there's that piece of this too, and everybody would probably. It appears that Brock Lesnar may be involved in some chicanery here with either him or Paul Heyman potentially being the referee and them playing. I said this was going to be an intellectual endeavor. Thank you. Yes,
sure they did.
So I think that they're going to play with that, and I think Seth wins, but there's a part of me that thinks that the cash-in just happens because they're getting pressured from USA to like get better ratings, and USA is submitting ideas to Vince. So I think it's like, well, maybe this will, get some views, and I don't think it's going to work. But I would not be surprised if Brock Lesnar leaves with the title on Sunday. But in the match that we're calling, I'm going to say Seth retains.
I'm going to say Seth retains as well. But I get just because I can't imagine Corbin with the title. How about for the more interesting piece? Who do you think is going to be the special guest referee?
So, if I was to try to make it interesting, what I would do is I would have it be Paul Heyman, but I would like play up the idea of like have maybe Heyman seek out Corbin and play to this idea that Corbin can be manipulated and be like, hey, just so you know, Brock's not even here. He wanted to go train in the mountains. To beat Ivan Drago, so he's up on top of a mountain somewhere, yelling out his name. Exactly. And so then play off of that. And so when the match is going on, Seth being very, very mistrusting of Heyman, Seth ends up winning, and then Brock's music hits, and you see Seth get ready for Brock to come out, and then Brock comes out from behind him and just decimates him and leaves with the title.
I actually think identically, except I don't think Brock.
I mean, I can see where they play with it again, but I think you can only do that so often. Because the other thing is, so apparently Brock has signed a new contract, but if it's like the deal he was working on before, every time he shows up, he makes like $500,000. So like eventually he's going to have to do something. Or they're just.
I don't know. They've never been big on making him do stuff in the past.
Fair enough, but I think that I think that they'll put the belt on him because they're just really worried about all of the negativity that's been around and the lack of ratings.
Giving Brock Lesnar the title again, that'll make people happy.
The Vince McMahon thing of, let's do what would have worked in 2007.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah, that's the thing. Like I'm laughing. I'm not laughing at your logic. At least Kevin, looking at it from the lens of Vince McMahon.
We just McMahon's had a show that was headlined by The Undertaker and Bill Goldberg.
I mean, yeah, that is true. And the sad thing is, I think everyone knew that was going to be a disaster, except for Vince, apparently. I knew it was going to be a disaster. I was like, these two weren't going to be able to go. They're old.
I don't think anybody saw that coming. Like, it was going to be awful, but
Oh,
like I
well,
don't think
no.
anybody realized that they were going to put themselves into situations where they were lucky to walk out of the ring.
Oh my God, yeah. I think what was it like Goldberg almost? I mean, his head hit the mat when I tried to do the tombstone, and they couldn't even get Taker off the ground for the reverse tombstone. You know, Goldberg couldn't do it because he had a
Well,
concussion, I guess, at that point. So that,
the
oh man, that was bad.
the idea that like anybody thinks that it's a safe idea to have somebody with a fake hip be speared by Bill Goldberg is just beyond me.
It's beyond stupid. Oh. And that was, yeah. So, okay. So that logic is being applied to the idea that Brock Lesnar is champion again, which inevitably is going to happen, which, by the way, poor Mustafa Ali about to get the Money in the Bank briefcase, and he finds out Brock Lesnar is the
Do
one that's
you
about to
know
take
how
it
they
from him.
booked it? How that all played out is everybody else in the match was told Ali was going to win,
No one
except
knew.
for Ali, who was like,
Yeah, yeah.
they pulled him aside and were like, yeah, Brock's going to come in and beat the hell out of you and then take you.
See, that's not what I was. That's not what I read. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but what I was read was that they told Ali, you're going to get to the top and you're going to reach for it, and someone's going to come out and take it, but they didn't say who.
Uh,
Supposedly,
maybe, but I knew that like Ali knew something was going to happen at least, but everybody else thought he was going to win.
yeah.
So
Absolutely, yeah. So the other performers were definitely they were completely left in the dark. But like, let's say Ali did know, obviously, well, he could be prepared to be bummed. But if you didn't know, and like as soon as you hear Brock's music, you're like, dude. Like even outside of being a performer, it's like I gotta lose to this guy. I gotta lose to this guy who everyone wants gone, and he's had his shot for a billion years. He just lost the title. Like, come on. All right. So that misery there. Let's get past that. We're both saying that Seth's going to win. You say that Brock's going to cash in and leave. I say that they're going to do the whole tease thing a little bit more. I decided that I was going to leave. We're going to do kind of the last prediction, one that I think is a little more upbeat, which is the WWE Championship, Kofi Kingston, the defending champ, versus Dolph Ziggler in a steel cage match. Now, you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier with how you would have booked it better. I don't know if you want to see if maybe that it plays a little bit of a role in who you think would win, but you know, this stuff relating to the revival and everything. But who do you think ultimately is going to end up winning this
I
match
think
here?
Kofi wins. I don't think that they have any plans for Ziggler. I think this was literally, hey, Kevin Owens doesn't want to go to Saudi Arabia, and we need to plug someone in. And so, at some point, maybe Kevin Owens gets back inserted back into this picture. Um, I don't think that they're going to do this in a fun way, but if I was going to do it my way, essentially what I would do is again cut back to the backstage area where Kofi is checking on the New Day. They like seem to be all right, but they're getting medical attention. You cut back a couple minutes later, and you see a forklift in front of the door, and Dolph paying somebody else off again, and just saying like, "This is gonna be me and Kofi." Um, and for the other part of this to work, you have to remember that Dolph said it should have been me. So you get into the title match in the cage. It's a great match. At the last second, Kofi wins. So for this to work, though, it has to be like by pinfall because Kofi has to be in the cage. So Kofi's celebrating, um, getting ready. Or go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it's actually a bold move that Kofi has
Well,
to be in the cage. It's like you got two guys that'll
yeah,
jump
well, I mean,
off
I think he
stuff.
could jump onto Ziggler in the cage, but for the whole thing I'm setting up, Kofi has to be in the cage. So Kofi wins a hard fought match. He
Okay.
is kind of laying there celebrating, and then right as he's about to leave the cage, lights go out. You get some weird cheesy kids music, and this is where the Firefly Fun Fest pays off, and you see kind of Mr. Rogers Bray Wyatt standing there, and he just beats the tar out of Kofi Kingston, but like do it in a way that's just ultra demented to where like maybe he's like talking in a kid's voice to Kofi as he's doing it, or just play with that a bit and set up this idea of Bray Wyatt as this Mr. Rogers demented character versus the New Day. because I think you could have a lot of fun with a group that was built off of, here's the kids and everything now having to get really serious because they're up against this monster that is taking everything that was fun about them and using it against them.
Hmm. So, I actually very much like that idea. I would probably do it. I would do it a little bit differently, as in, I think the target for me would be a little different as to who I would want Bray Wyatt to kind of be unleashed on. If Kofi's going to win, which I think he will, and Dolph doesn't really plan on sticking around too much, I think it would make a lot of sense if Bray kind of went to town on Dolph instead. Really kind of, you could probably do some cool stuff with him in the next Firefly Funhouse, maybe like, I don't know, whatever his trunks could be hanging in the background or something. I think it would be kind of a little soon to do that to like a Kofi, personally. But that's mainly based off the fact that I think you're right in that Dolph was just kind of plugged in, and they're giving him this rematch just because, again, they want to kind of conclude Kevin Owens' thing over there with the New Day and Dolph Ziggler's thing with Kofi here. So I think this may be his last appearance, and as a result, it'd be a really good thing for Bray
Well, so
to
that's
kind
the
of
other
pounce
piece. So
on.
I think that you have Dolph still appear once or twice, but this is kind of the funnier part to me is like, so Dolph was like, it should have been me. So you cut to Tuesday as they're talking about what happened to Kofi when Bray destroys Kofi, and Dolph is like, well, I guess I'm glad it wasn't me, and just kind of that smarky
Mm.
heel thing, or maybe and maybe he says it to like Xavier Woods, and that sets off something for a little bit. I think you're right that Dolph is not long for being on regular television. I don't know, like the only thing I know is that they offered to make him a coach, and he said no. But I don't really know
Hmm.
what their deal with him looks like in terms of like that they want him on regular TV, or if it's like, oh, somebody goes down, let's call Dolph. But I just don't. They're out of things to do with him to make you care. Like I don't think that even if they put the
Yeah.
title on him at this point, like you can't really fix Dolph at this point unless he leaves WWE entirely.
I mean, I gotta say, I agree with that. Only because I don't think they're gonna invest enough that you could fix him. But like I said before, I loved Dolph with Drew McIntyre. I thought it worked. I thought him being kind of the smarmy, small heel with kind of like the big hulking bodyguard or whatever. I thought that actually worked. But they're not going to go back to that anytime soon. So it's just not worth it. Like Dolph's a guy that they can cut loose, even though I've really liked him. There's a bunch of like fat that can be trimmed. I mean, they have a guy like Bobby Lashley who's a tank, and
Well,
they have nothing for him. So you
yeah,
can if you can
I'll
lose
take
them,
that
it's
back. The
better.
other way that they could fix Dolph is send him to NXT and have him be like too big for NXT because like legitimately Dolph puts on great matches. He's athletic as hell. And so he could basically create with any of them and have him go basically be this like, I'm a former world champion. I don't belong here and have him work with Gargano and Velveteen like that would make some people care about him again, but that is the only thing I think WWE could do with him to revive him to some of their fans.
Wow, you want to do to him what his lookalike did recently,
I don't
Tyler
know if I would say
Breeze.
they look alike.
I mean, they looked pretty similar for a period. Not anymore. He cut his hair, but Tyler Breeze and him, they had the long flowing blonde hair. I'm really
Oh
into
yes,
myself
that
thing going
incredibly
on.
original idea of being a blonde guy who's in love with himself.
Woo! Or what we got here? Gorgeous George back in the day, is that it? Um, yes. Okay. So Ziggles, I think he's going to lose as well. I hope it leads into the Firefly Funhouse thing, kind of like you had mentioned, because we're pretty much at the end of the podcast here, but I do think that I want to give a quick shout out, even though we talked about a lot of things that WWE has been doing very poorly lately. The kind of miraculously awesome thing that's been going on, aside from the 24/7 title, has been the Firefly Funhouse with Bray Wyatt. And it seems as though he's actually this has all come from his own mind for the most part. And even the characters, they kind of play on his old character, like the little buzzard, the little sister Abigail, and the little rabbit, and even like the little devil Vince McMahon have been just terrific. I think to watch, and somehow he's made this really twisted, fun universe, and I can't wait to see. I forget do you remember what the alter ego is called? Like the the
I do
enforcer or
not.
something like that.
Full
It's a guy with a Joker mask,
disclosure,
essentially.
I don't get it. Like, well, no, like I'm not saying it's bad, but
What?
like I don't think it's for me, and
I was gonna
maybe that's
say.
because I have a child, and so I have to like screen things on YouTube now, and so this kind of hits too close to home. I think it's a good idea, but like I'm never gonna be a huge fan of him. But I think it's a good angle, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, because I mean, it's not the same thing, but I have to say, I think if people are like were really into the beginnings of like Broken
Oh
Matt
yeah, I mean,
Hardy, I don't see why you couldn't
I
be
think
interested
it's
in this.
similar in that it's
It's
going to
pretty
set up
twisted.
like its own universe, and so I think that this is, in some ways, this is like when Vince got the Hardys, he wanted to explore it, and then realize like we realized it wasn't going to happen. I think that this is similar, where it's them dabbling with the okay, if you get the right guy, you can kind of create a universe unto them, and so I think that that's what they're trying to do. So I agree that this idea of like the broken universe may be something similar, only this will be much much darker.
Yeah, I really hope so because the vignettes they've been doing have been really
Yeah, I
good.
don't
You
talk
okay
that
over there? You
much.
dying? That's okay. We're pretty much wrapping up here anyway. We could talk about a few other things kind of more in depth at a different time, but this really, we just wanted to kind of get our predictions out of the way and what we see coming, and we'll find out whether or not we're as smart as we think we are. Or who knows, we'll fall flat on our faces like many other podcasts. I mean, we pretty much have been inspired by, the old What Culture guys like Adam Pacitti and Blampier and King Ross and Jack the Jobber, of course, all those guys that now are doing
It's
what's it
cultaholic,
called
but they
again?
sometimes
What's the new one?
like redacted is what they refer
Cultaholics.
to what culture as, and so we can refer to them as redacted if we need to. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Double redacted. Okay, that's fine. We're into those guys, and basically we want to kind of do some of the stuff they do. So maybe who knows? Maybe we'll do some challenges and all that kind of fun stuff. And our other buddy Mike, we're gonna have on here as well, probably for a few special episodes. You'll enjoy him quite a bit. But that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this one. You should check out. We're hoping to do these at least ideally every week, but maybe every other week. So you can look out for that on our SoundCloud, which is Critical Ring Theory, of course, and also youtube.com, which right now we don't have a custom URL because we're a small channel. But if you just search Critical Ring Theory, you will be able to find it there. And of course, if we have it uploaded on anything else, we will be sure to let you know that as soon as we can. But for us, I think we're going to have to say goodbye to this go around here. And hopefully you enjoy Stomping Grounds
Stay
more
classy,
than I
Cleveland.
think you will. And Philadelphia, if you can. All right. Take care, everybody. Hope you have an amazing day.